Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Going to Bat with Team Irie. This is episode number 40. If you've missed any of the previous episodes, you can scroll down the foundation page here and watch some of those. And also, if you're interested in some of the upcoming interviews, you can keep an eye on the foundation page. We usually post the day of or the day before who we're going to have on. And if you'd like to donate to the foundation, you can go down and look at the website where we raise money for spinal cord injury awareness and research, and we give out high school scholarships to baseball and softball players. And there also is a place to find our public events when we have them. You can go to our website, which is dif35.org. Tonight's guest is none other than former Phillies pitcher and a couple other teams, and also 80s World Series champion, and also author now, Randy Lerch. How you doing tonight, Randy?
I'm doing great, David, and even better now being on your show. It's a great honor, my friend.
Hey, it's an honor to have you on here. And of course, I invited Al to watch the show tonight. I don't know if Al will be on here or not, but I was hoping maybe he'd get to come on here and kind of watch us a little bit tonight. So maybe, you never know, Al might show up here in a little bit.
Hey, Al, if you're on there, man, we need to talk. Ha!
There you go. You're already killing me. So here we go. We'll kind of start. Usually we start the questions about working up to the major leagues and that kind of stuff. Now I was reading up where you had a pretty good high school record when you pitched in high school. I mean, you threw 95 miles an hour, and I mean you done really good. What was your record, like 31-1 or something?
Yes, it was something like that, David, and I lost the one game. Man, shame on me. But we had some. Our high school team was amazing. We had I don't know if people, I'm sure they have heard of Jerry Manuel. Jerry Manuel was a great friend and teammate. He was the #1 draft choice, I believe, with the Detroit Tigers. He was also Chicago White Sox Manager of the Year. He also managed the New York Mets, and he has a great foundation over here in Rancho Cordova, where we're from. And we had Niles Nyman, Larry Wolf, and Max Venable. So where I'm going with that is our high school team was one of the top teams in the nation, and we had some players that played in the major leagues off those teams.
Yeah, and I know you went from the high school to minor leagues, and it's like, you was drafted by the Phillies, so you lived in California, and I think the Phillies, the farm team or the minor league team, weren't they like in New York?
Yeah, it was Auburn, New York, and a funny story, kind of a segue from high school into the minor leagues is I was actually a high school All-America hitter, and I liked hitting better than I did pitching, even though I was 31-1, and so when I was drafted by the Phillies, the Eddie Bachman, the scout, was ready to sign me. I said, "Well, Eddie didn't tell me what I am. Am I a hitter or am I a pitcher?" And I was hoping he was going to say, "You're going to be a hitter." And he said, "No." He says, "The Philadelphia Phillies right now drafted you. They need left-handed pitching, and if that doesn't work out, we'll make you a hitter." So I went from there to Auburn, New York, and had a rude awakening because I found out in a big hurry that the pitchers don't get to hit. And I remember I got to start my first game, and the next day when we were ready to look at the lineup to see who was in the lineup, I says, "Coach," I says, "I don't see my name up here. What position am I playing?" He says, "Right there on that bench, son." He goes, "Pitchers don't hit in this league." So I remember trying to, for my first professional season, trying to figure out what I was going to do with myself in between starts. What a rude awakening.
Oh, I'd say it was. And that was the first time you actually flew when you went from, when you first went out to Auburn, New York or whatever. And it's like, I was listening to one of your other interviews, like the first time you ever been on the plane, and it was kind of hard leaving your mom and all that.
You're right. I found out what a mommy's boy I was and what a big baby I was. And I tell the story in my book that I was sitting on the window close as I could to Mama while they were in the Sacramento airport or outside of it, looking at my plane. I could see Mom and Dad standing there, and I'm waving to them, and all of a sudden it hit me that, holy cow, you're leaving home. You're barely 18 years old, I think, and you're leaving home, and maybe you may never see your mommy again. So all of a sudden the tears started rolling down my face, and I was embarrassed for myself, but it was a rude awakening. And I went to play in, like I said, Auburn, New York, and what a great experience it was. My first professional season.
Yeah, it's almost like going to kindergarten. When you go to kindergarten, all of a sudden you don't see your mom anymore. That reminded me of what you were talking about there.
For sure.
I know that we talked, a little bit about the minors. You kind of went through the minors fairly quickly, but I also, was hearing about a little incident that was probably the most dangerous incident in the minors, but that didn't actually have anything to do with baseball.
It didn't. What happened was I missed my girlfriend so bad my first year in the minor leagues that when I got home, the first thing I wanted to do was marry her. So we got married. We did it in a real big hurry. So it was from the season ending in Auburn to getting home, asking her to marry me. She was even younger than I was, so her dad wasn't real happy about that one. And we had our wedding, and one of our wedding gifts was a pressure cooker. I didn't even know what that thing was. I don't think my mom had one. If she did, I didn't know what it was. And our first season in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, we were trying to use that thing, and I had no idea how dangerous it was. And when things weren't boiling, I decided to find out why. And with it on the stove with pressure on it, and I opened it up and blew it up all over myself. Lucky I didn't blow the whole house up, and ended up with second and third degree burns all over the front of me. And it was like, welcome to marriage and the minor leagues, son.
Exactly. And those pressure cookers are pretty dangerous. You can get hurt there. And talking about Rocky Mount, North Carolina, matter of fact, I have a cousin that I just met a few years ago that has the same name as me, David Irie, and he lives in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. So that's kind of weird. And, when you started coming up, through the minor leagues and you went to the majors, I always ask a lot of the players this question. What was it like when you got that call that you were going to the majors?
That's a great question. I was in AA, so it was just a year after my pressure cooker stunt, and I went to Reading, Pennsylvania, real close to Philadelphia. I guess about an hour and a half away from the Veterans Stadium at that time, and I had a great year. I was 16-6, and we went to the playoffs. I forget. I think it was the Red Sox, Bristol, Connecticut, or something like that. It was the Red Sox farm team, and we went into extra innings. I actually, believe it or not, pitched 14 innings that day, and in the playoffs. And after 14 innings, the game was still tied 1-1. And I don't remember who won the game, and I didn't know it. But Dallas Green, the farm director at the time, was in the stands, and he came to me after the game was over, and he says, "You pitched pretty good, kid," And he says, "How would you like to come and pitch in Philadelphia?" And I thought he was kidding me. I had no idea what he was talking about. Philadelphia? What do you mean Philadelphia? He goes, "Well, the rosters are expanding, and we'd like you to fill a spot on there." And holy cow! I mean, I couldn't get on the phone fast enough. And of course, my dad was my hero in those days, and he brought me up through Little League, high school, and the whole bit. And I couldn't get on the phone fast enough and invite him out to watch me to pitch in the minor leagues. And for the first time, I was just barely 20 years old.
And then once you got to the major leagues, you got to meet Tug McGraw, which we'll talk a little bit more about that later too. But Tug was a friend all the way through, but what was it like the first time that you met Tug McGraw?
Tug McGraw was a nut. He was when I met Tug McGraw, one of the first, and this is a cute, funny little story. I don't know how many people. A lot of people know Tug McGraw, and I don't know how many people know what a fun, loving, happy-go-lucky. Let's just have fun on and off the baseball field. And I remember my first team I pitched against, or I guess it was my second team, was the New York Mets, and Tug had been on that World Series team, the Mets. I guess you gotta believe, and I had my first pitching experience. I think it was against Rusty Staub, Ed Kranepool, and I forget what the other. It was another power hitter, and I remember when Ed Kranepool came up to the plate, Tug McGraw was getting as close as he could to home plate in our dugout. He was nestled in next to Danny Ozark and where Danny usually stands watching the game, and I could hear Tug screaming at Ed Kranepool, who was the first hitter I faced. He says, Craney, be careful, he's wild. And I always used to throw pretty hard, and I saw Kranepool kind of look over his right shoulder, looking into the dugout, and Tug was making a sign like make sure you duck, and made a sign like the ball's headed over his head, and so the first pitch I threw right down the middle, Kranepool took it. The second one, the third one, strike one, strike two, strike three, go sit down. And the next two hitters did the same exact thing. I think I threw 9, 10, or 11 pitches, whatever it was, but nobody took a swing at the ball. I got 3 outs in a hurry, and Tug got me the quickest and easiest 3 outs that I ever had. I thought, well, heck, this is easy if Tug's sitting or standing in the dugout. But I found out in a real big hurry, those hitters aren't going to stand there, all the time like that. It was a great story.
And then Tug also mentioned to you that you wasn't going to take his job either, right?
That was that was after my first being called up. It was the next spring. I was invited to spring training, and Tug, he knew me a little bit, and he was standing waiting for me to come out of the dugout. And he says, and I didn't know Tug. I mean, he's, I guess it's his way of introducing himself. But so he's standing as I'm walking out onto the complex there for spring training, and he says, "Hey kid, I'm a left-handed pitcher, don't you?" I said, "Well, yeah, I know that." He goes, "Well, you know what?" He goes, "And that, basically you're not going to take my job. You're a left-handed pitcher. I'm a left-handed pitcher. And if you think for 1 second I'm going to let you take my job, you got another thing coming." And I didn't tell the story very good, but Tug he read me the riot act. He was trying to intimidate me because he was letting it be known, since he's an older player and I'm a kid, I better be careful out there. He was a nut.
Yeah, and everybody knows, of course, that was Tim McGraw's dad, and everybody's heard some stories on Tug over the years, and a little bit about your book, God in the Bullpen. We're kind of like getting to the point where we're going to start talking a little bit about it, which I appreciate you sending me that book. I'm going to, do these interviews for a week or two more, then I'll get to read your book more in depth. But, the first year that you went or, made it to the majors, and the book talks a little bit about this, is the greenies, the amphetamines. Did you feel pressure to take them, or was it just like something that you kind of like, well, let's try it and see what happens?
What it was it was my first, after I'd made the team. I had a great spring training. I actually had 26 scoreless innings in a row in spring training, and ended up making the team. And I ended up being 5-2 my first 7 starts, and I had one of my teammates who was a very established pitcher that came to me and said, "Hey kid, I know you're 5-2, but make sure that, or not make sure, but in order for you to be successful with a long season, it would really behoove you to take these pills. And they were greenies, and I looked up to him and took his advice, and I really liked the feeling. Even though when I went out and played that night with those in me, I gave up back-to-back home runs, and found out that that didn't help that in that way. I liked the feeling to the point I kept taking them, and I started drinking on them, able to go to sleep, and didn't really realize, I don't know why, that was the reason that I started pitching really bad, but I kept taking them and like a dummy, and had real bad results out of that.
Yeah, it kind of derailed your career, and being that this, I guess the greenies is like speed or uppers or whatever, which I've never taken anything any worse than Copenhagen, so. But I guess that's what they are, like speed or something, right?
Yes, it is. It's the speed. It actually made me feel. I always had a lot of anxiety before I would pitch. I got real nervous. I hated that feeling, even though I found out after the fact that that's what made me pitch so well through the minor leagues. I was minor league pitcher of the year. I was 5-2 my first 7 starts in the major leagues, and then. I didn't realize that that those were what was hurting me. But I like that feeling. I like the feeling of not feeling real nervous before the game, and it made me feel invincible out there. But it also made me quit pitching. Instead of making sure I was careful with the hitters and respected the hitters, I would just see if I could throw the ball as hard as I could right down the middle, and the results a lot of times weren't very good.
Yeah, and I know I read where you threw, like 95 mile an hour fastball, and some compared you the way you look, being left-handed, slim pitcher to Randy Johnson, and some of the things I read about you. And I mean, you started off the year great. You got on amphetamines. Was there ever a point where you thought, I'm going to have to stop this? You realized that it's hurting your performance. And I know, like, the next year, 178, you finally came to the conclusion, it's like, maybe I need help. So you kind of like found God, but you really didn't stop, and you just kept going, right?
I did. I was so inconsistent. I was going through that same year, and 1977 is when the year when I found the Lord, and I was so inconsistent. If I pitched really bad, it seemed like the team would score enough runs to excuse me to tie the game, and then if I pitched real good, we wouldn't score any runs. And I just didn't know how to take the press and all the pressure. So I know that I'd been to Bible study a couple times, and they had talked about accepting the Lord, and so I thought, well, maybe the Lord will, if I accept the Lord, maybe I'll pitch good. But I didn't understand it. I didn't have anyone there to tell me all about what I was doing and take me to the next step. And so I kept taking my greenies. I was in too deep, and kept headed down the wrong path, even though the Lord was and has been since that point deep in my heart. I still had a lot of learning to do.
We've got Tyler Blackburn over here. It says, awesome to be on here again watching. Matthew Abner, he said, do you wish you had ever had a bat of Don Robinson? He's talking about Don Robinson, but it says, do you wish you had ever at bat of Don Robinson? Did Don Robinson, was he one of your teammates, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. He was Don Robinson, and he knows it when he asks the question. He was the pitcher that I hit the 2 home runs off of in the clincher. So there's a trick question for you, and I got him. Okay. I'll never forget that name.
Okay, so he said, "Do you wish you had every at bat against?"
Oh, I got you.
Yeah,
You know what? It was just one of those days where Don Robinson was a great pitcher. He threw really hard. He was very successful with the Pirates, along with, I think, the San Francisco Giants. And it was just one of those days I remember the day of the game when I was taking batting practice. The ball was just jumping off my bat, and Willie Stargell told me the story after the game at a golf course at a fundraiser, like I said, in the off season, and he told me the story that he watched me take batting practice, and Willie went into Don Robinson and told Don, Lerch hits pretty good, and he's really launching him. He's really swinging the bat good in batting practice. Be careful today. And Willie tells me the story that, Don said, blankety blank Lerch, he can't hit and he ain't going to hit me. And so I end up, actually I gave up a grand slam in the first inning to Willie Stargell that game. It was the clinching game for the division if we won it in the last 4 games of the season. It was actually 2 games before the end of the season. And Willie had hit the grand slam, and I thought, holy cow, I'm in big trouble. We can't lose this game. And if we do, I'm going to get a piece of Don or somebody. And so I hit the first home run over the center field fence, and Willie tells me the story at the golf course. He went over to Don and said, man, I thought I told you. He goes, yeah, watch this next time he comes up. He says, I'm going to bury him. And I came up the next time and hit a ball over Dave Parker's head, a line drive into the right field seats. And Willie says, now what do you have to say for yourself? He says, that guy can hit.
Yeah, I was going to talk a little bit about that after a while too. But, I mean, you're a good hitter. I mean, I know I was reading somewhere like in the minor leagues, you hit like over 300 in the minor leagues and different things. I mean, you're a good hitter.
I took a lot of pride in it, David. I actually, Dusty Baker, I just was inducted in the Sacramento Sports Hall of Fame this last January, and Dusty Baker was my presenter, and Dusty, while he was up talking about me before he gave me my award, he says one thing, about Randy Lerch. He says he could hit. He says, and he knew he could hit, and he would tell you he could hit. So I'm not bragging right now, but yes, I could hit.
Yeah, exactly, and that's really cool. I know talking about the World Series in 1980, and I'll get to Tyler Blackburn here too. He's wanting to know, what was the feeling like of winning the World Series?
The World Series, it was a great feeling for my teammates, but I'm sorry to say that I was at the end of the season, we clinched it against the Montreal Expos to go to the World Series, and I hadn't pitched very well, and I didn't get along with Dallas Green, the manager at the time, and it was my own fault. And they ended up leaving me off the roster, even though I was on the team and got a World Series ring, but I wasn't eligible for the series. Sorry to say.
I was going to ask you about that because I saw in the book where you had your World Series ring and all that kind of stuff. So that was one of the things I was going to ask, and then I saw in the book where you had it. So I know you was left off the roster in the World Series, and I was just thinking, man, did he get a ring or what? But that was good to know that you did. But it was mostly just because you and Dallas didn't get along was the reason you didn't get on the roster, right?
Well, and it was my fault. I mean, I started out the season pitching really well, and I just wasn't getting any wins. One of those years where I just couldn't buy a win. I ended up being 4-14 on a team that won the division and went on to the World Series. And we'd had some young players, Bob Walk and I believe Dickie Knowles, that had come up, who was pitching really well, and so all the things together, they decided to leave me off the World Series team, and it was devastating, especially being the guy that hit the 2 home runs to take them to the division championship and get the win that day, and then not be left off. It was one of the toughest things that ever happened to me in my lifetime, and a long list. But we all have our problems in this world, especially with this pandemic going on. But it was a very, very hard pill to swallow, and it took me forever to really come to terms and talk about it. and I'm glad I'm doing it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you are too. And of course, everybody needs to check your book out. God in the Bullpen, and a lot of this is in your book. We talk about the amphetamines. Actually, there was a little trouble there around '82 where you actually had to go to trial and testify against a doctor and all that kind of stuff that kind of was prescribing these amphetamines, didn't you?
Yeah, so the doctor, the Reading, Pennsylvania, where I played, it was a double A affiliate of the Phillies. It's still there, and the doctor there, which a lot of the players came through Reading, Pennsylvania to get to the big leagues. They knew the team doctor, and a few of the players were getting the amphetamines, and it's no secret because it went to trial that they got the amphetamines, and I had one of my teammates because I was starting the next day. I wasn't at the game that we played against the Reading Phils exhibition game, and they, in order to get some more of the greenies, they told him put my name on a prescription, and I ended up getting in trouble for it along with them. They took it to trial, and my teammates denied, some of them even knowing the doctor. And when it was my turn to testify, he was only 5 feet from me, looking straight in his eye, and there's no way that I was going to lie and tell him I didn't know him, or take his practice, or maybe even to chance of incarcerate him. And so I told the truth, and they threw the case out. I ended up costing me tremendously because I was known as someone that was way worse than you know how that works. And so it definitely put a big asterisk next to my name.
It did, but I think you done the right thing by telling the truth, and I'm proud of you for doing that. I know, going through all that stuff and everything you was involved with, it wasn't an easy road, but to know that you told the truth, even with everything else going on, still says a lot about you as a person.
Well, thank you so much. What made it so worthwhile was the beautiful letter that I got from his wife and then his daughter saying, just telling me thank you for saving their father, their husband's practice, and doing the right thing. So that made it all worthwhile.
And of course, like I said, a lot of this is in your book. A whole lot more than we can ever touch on here is in the book. I think it's like 246 or 64 pages, but people need to look at your book. There's a lot of good stuff in there, and talk a little bit about the drug problem, and without naming names or anything like that, but how prevalent was the drug problem in baseball in the late 70s and 80s with the uppers? I mean, that was before the steroids, really, but it was like the amphetamines and stuff back in that day. How prevalent was that?
Well, I can only speak for my team, and I have no idea what other teams were doing, but when Dusty Baker was talking about my book, he says, he says in those days, a lot of guys took greenies. It was known that they take greenies, and the beer and alcohol and stuff was, and I'm sure players are still doing it. We didn't even know what a steroid. I'd never even heard of a steroid in those days. Guys took the greenies and drank their beer, and that was the end of that. And so now it just kind of moved on to the steroid era. And I guess the way it works is the game is so tough and so competitive that a lot of guys will do things to get that edge.
Exactly. And I know after your baseball and everything that after your career, you went in a little family business right there and in the restaurant, and trying to skip over a lot of things here because we only have so much time. But when you jumped in the restaurant business and it failed, that was like rock bottom, wasn't it?
It was, because I didn't know what I was going to do after I retired. I had 11, 12 years in the major leagues, but I wasn't one of those guys that made a lot of money, and finances were getting pretty low. And When I got home, my wife from my last game, my wife told me that she didn't want to be married anymore. And my dad and I said, let's go into a restaurant business together. And we did in Placerville, California. And we had no business going into that business because we didn't know anything about it. You need to know what you're doing. And so the business went broke, and I ended up drinking. And this is when my heaviest drinking started after all those years. And I tried to drown all my hurts and stuff, and got into taking heavier drugs, and was penniless, homeless. And I got a phone call from Tug McGraw. No, let me back up. I called Tug McGraw for help because I felt like, he could help me. Maybe I could go back to Philadelphia where I had some success and start all over again. So I didn't know that Tug was having enough problems of his own, but I had a plane ticket in the mail the next day and a place to stay. And between him and Larry Christensen, they got me a job and helped me to get on my feet for a while anyway, until I blew it again.
That's pretty awesome. But I also heard where, you had the amphetamines, the greenies, the drinking, and, one of the parts is talking about snorting vodka, but you kind of cleared that up for me earlier. But you also went into a little harder stuff like cocaine.
Yes, when I after I left the restaurant, I roomed with a guy that had he was into that stuff, and I had used it actually with him before. And then started using the cocaine and drinking. What little money I had, I spent on that stuff, and that's what led for me to not have anywhere to live and to call Tug.
And that it hurts my stomach just thinking about all this stuff that you went through. It's really intriguing, and people really need to see this book because, like I'm saying, we're not even scratching the surface on this stuff. And when you look back at all the problems you've went through and how it got started, what advice would you give to teenagers? If you could talk to teenagers and try to keep them from making the same mistakes, what kind of advice would you give to teenagers or anyone that, maybe something that you could say to them to keep them from being, addicted to drugs, or to stop that before it ever happened?
The great advice I can give is after I quit drinking and found out what it was like to be sober and to be the real me and think straight. I didn't write my book until after I was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver and had my doctor tell me that I could go into liver failure at any time. So basically, I was a walking dead man. And so after 40 years of drinking, pretty much nonstop, with the exception of, and you'll read about it in the book, a stint or two in detox and the hospital. I drank for all those years, and I quit cold turkey after I saw the tears in my wife's eyes when we found out that I was basically not gonna. I had a strong chance of dying. And when God gave me a second chance, I wanted to climb the highest mountain, the tallest hill, or whatever you would have you, and tell the world about the dangers of drug and alcohol abuse, and how good you can feel, and what if I like to say that once you quit drinking, then God can finally do everything with you that He meant you to be, that He created you to be. And so once I did that, I've had my life has been so blessed. It's been 4 years now, and I've met so many people, like this special guy right here I'm talking to, David. And so I've met so many people. I've got over 3,000 friends on Facebook, along with that Al Oliver, who won't answer me. He's in trouble for that one. So, but I've got a lot of people that I've answered every one of the 3,000 people. I've talked to them back and forth about drug abuse and drug and alcohol abuse, and how much of a better person you'll be and healthier and the whole bit by just getting your life in order and living it for God. So, I didn't realize just how messed up I was until I got my head straight.
My Uncle Bob, which, helps me with a lot of these questions, he said great testimony. He's on here watching tonight. And Matthew Abner, he said, awesome story. Thanks for coming on the show. Mike Long, he said, good show tonight, guys. Randy, can you give us a story involving any of the Big Red Machine guys you played with in Philadelphia, or a Mike Smith story? You played with Pete Rose up there, didn't you?
I did. I played with Pete Rose, and I've got a couple of them. Pete Rose. When I was playing against Pete Rose, I tease about this, but when Pete was on his 40 game, or what was it? How many games did he hit, David, in a row? His hitting streak. But I know I was number 40. And okay. I tease people, I never made it to the Hall of Fame by getting inducted, but I made it in a lot of other ways. I made it by being Pete's 40th consecutive hit. And one of the stories I tell is I could never get him out. And Jim Longborg, who was a veteran pitcher and had a Cy Young Award with the Boston Red Sox, I said, Lonnie, man, I can't get that guy out. I said, no matter what kind of pitch, how good the pitch I make, he always gets a hit. He goes, Randy, I've had the same problem for years. He goes, I said, well, what'd you do? He says, take the ball, throw it as hard as you possibly can, right down the middle. He says, instead of him taking your good pitch and just serving it really easy over the shortstop or second baseman's head, and then if you make a mistake, of course, he crushed it. But he goes, if you throw it down the middle hard, he'll hit the crap out of it right at somebody, and you'll always get him out. And another story was George Foster. We always would. George Foster was one of the most awesome powerful home run hitters. He kept real great care of himself. And I was pitching in Cincinnati, and I remember I threw George Foster a changeup that was off the plate, going away from him, below the knees, probably 4 or 5 inches off the plate. And I figured it was just going to be a ball. And all of a sudden, you hear the crack of the bat, and I heard a whiz go past my ear. And George Foster took my changeup. And when I turned around, the ball had left the infield, probably just infielder high, and just started rising. And it rose and rose and rose till it ended up in the second deck. And if that ball would have hit me, it'd have killed me. But I couldn't believe the power that George Foster had, and he could hit a changeup that far.
That's funny you say that, because when I had Al Oliver on here one night, a guy was commenting about, he was talking to a pitcher, and he said that he threw a pitch to Al Oliver and it whizzed past his head, and he turned around and it went in line drive over the home run fence.
Yep. Yeah. It's what it is. It's that backspin. They get so much backspin. Mike Schmidt hit most of his home runs that way.
Yeah, exactly. So how's your health now, Randy?
By the grace of God, I'm doing well. I went to, I like Maria, my wife, told me, first God. By the grace of God and first God, I've got my next doctor's appointment, which they need to check me a lot for polyps that grow in your throat from your lack of liver function that can cause to varices, and you got to check on that, and you got to check for cancer. But after I had my one of my appointments, I talk about in the book that after the doctor told me that it's not looking good for you, he wanted to put me on the liver transplant list, and I didn't want to. I told him no, give the liver to somebody that deserves it. And so when I went to my appointment after and going over my test results, the doctor, like many times, only this time he just looked there and got a grin on his face, shook his head, and looked up at me about in tears. And he said, Randy, he said, this just doesn't happen this way. Doesn't usually turn out this way, but it looks like you've been given a second chance. But I've got a second chance one day at a time. And thank you, David, for asking. By God's great grace, I'm doing well.
Yeah, I was wondering because I know you had cirrhosis of the liver, and you talk about that in the book and different things. So I didn't know if you had a liver transplant or if you still had your same liver and just fighting the cirrhosis.
Just the same liver and doing, of course, not drinking ever again. First God, and doing what the doctors tell me to do.
All right, we've got a few more questions here now. If you need a drink of water or whatever you need to do, you can get one. But I was going to ask you, what was your most memorable moment? I know you was on the '80 World Series team, but what would be your most memorable moment of your Major League Baseball career? Would it be the 2 home runs to win the division title there, or what is your most memorable moment?
It was my most memorable moment was the 2 home runs, and I can kind of set up the story that the Pittsburgh Pirates were always our nemesis, and this was in 1978. The Pirates, it seemed like we'd always battle them for the pennant, the title, and stuff. And so the Pirates, we were playing well. The Pirates were playing well, and it went down into the last 4 games of the season. One of them was a makeup game. So we had a 2-game doubleheader on a Friday. We had a 3-game lead with 4 to play, and the Friday game was a weird 2 losses for us. We lost it on Bake McBride and Gary Maddox coming together on it was one of your you got it, I got it, you take it type of things, and it dropped in between them. In the 9th inning, we lost, and then I wasn't going to tattle on Warren Brewster, but I was on a show the other day with him, and I says, a pitcher balked the winning run in, and he goes, that was me. And I go, okay, now I can tell the story. So and so Warren Brewster, not dogging him, not dogging you, Brew, but he balked in the run on from third base in the bottom of the 9th. So they won the first 2 games on a Friday night. I went into Saturday. So we had a 1-game lead with 2 to play. And, of course, I was super nervous before that game because we lost that one. We were going into the last game, with the pennant on the line. And Pittsburgh was on a roll. And I ended up giving up a grand slam to Willie Stargell in the first inning. And then I thought, holy cow, like I was telling you earlier, I'm not going to, if I'm going to lose this game, the team's going to lose this game, I'm going to at least get a piece of somebody. And I ended up hitting those 2 home runs, and we won. We clinched the pennant. And it was actually the greatest clubhouse celebration. I had a few of them over the years. It was the greatest clubhouse celebration because there was so much relief after we won it. And we went to Los Angeles to play them in the playoffs, and we lost. Actually, lost to the Dodgers in the playoffs, and Gary Maddox had dropped a fly ball in extra innings. You never see Gary Maddox make any mistakes, and he dropped a fly ball, and we lost to the Dodgers in the playoffs. They went on to play the Yankees in the World Series, and I think the Yankees beat them that year.
You was talking about Pete Rose earlier. I've got my own Pete Rose story. He came up behind me one day. We had David Irie Day at Cincinnati. It was also Pete Rose Day. So when I took a picture with me, came up behind me, started rubbing my shoulders, and he said, that'll be $50.
No kidding, right?
That's what he said. But anyway, for a pitcher to hit 2 home runs in 1 game, that's pretty awesome, especially when you don't expect a pitcher to do that. So that's a really great thing there. But also, when you played for Milwaukee, you were actually the first time Milwaukee Brewers was like in a playoff game, right?
I started the first playoff win in Brewers history in Yankee Stadium against the Yankees. It's the years where they had Reggie Jackson, Dave Winfield, Willie Randolph, Greg Nettles. You can go on and on. Lou Piniella, all those guys, and so I ended up leaving the game with a 3-hitter, and was looking forward to Raleigh Fingers to close it out for me, and he got it tied up and ended up getting the win that day. But I started the game, the winning game And it took us. No, I was going to say it took us to the final game, which we lost against the Yankees. But I ended up starting the first win in Brewers history.
I like that, and I know I didn't have it down, but I just thought about that, and I wanted to kind of give you kudos for that. But you also play for the Expos, which that's one of my favorite uniforms. I always tell Doug Flynn and those guys, Oliver, I love those Expos uniforms. But you look about through, we've already talked about some of the stories, but Al Oliver and you are good friends, and Al, I told him I was going to have you on, and he said Randy Lerch, and he just started laughing, and he said, "You tell Randy that I said ha." So can you kind of like, if you don't care, kind of like tell a little story about Al and that ha?
For sure. You can see a big grin on my face. You and I were talking a little before we came on the air, David, that he's one of the nicest people that I've ever met. But you never found that out until he was your teammate or something, because I remember he was one of the most vicious hitters and great hitters that I've ever played against. And Al looked so mean at the plate. He looked like he's going to tear your head off, and he probably could. I mean, sometimes Al would swing so hard his helmet would come off, But after playing on a couple teams with him and getting to know him, but the pitchers and the hitters didn't get to know each other that good. But we ended up playing with each other on the senior league, and Al and I used to tease with Al, and on the bus, I'd yell at him. I would say, "So Al, can you hit? Could you hit?" And he would just go, "Ha!" Yeah, and then he'd go, "Nah, I can hit." And then everybody on the team would, the bus would laugh like crazy. And then at the end, he'd go, "Chief." And then I would go, "Al, could you field?" Now I can field. And he'd go, "Ha!" And then he go, "Cheese." So it was just, we cut up and just we had a great time together. What a special guy Al Oliver is.
Yeah, and he's a dear friend of mine, and he's been there with me ever since I suffered my spinal cord injury playing baseball. So he doesn't live far from me, and I'll text him or call him every once in a while. And Al's a great guy. A great guy.
He is.
Your book, we're kind of finishing up here a little bit, but one more question. Who was the toughest hitter that you faced?
It was hitters like Bill Madlock. It was Pete Rose. I mean, I couldn't get Pete Rose out, and I'd be in trouble if I don't say Al. But Al was a great, a heck of an out. The Cincinnati Reds were real tough, and in those days, I always like to think, well, this day and age, when they say that the hitters are bigger, stronger, and everything, but boy, I'll tell you, being a pitcher and going into Pittsburgh with Willie Stargell, Al Oliver, Dave Parker, Rennie Stennett, Bill Robinson, Manny Sanguin, and then when they got done with you, of course, the Cincinnati with the Big Red Machine with Johnny Bench and Pete and Foster and of course, Joe Morgan, left-handed hitter that I couldn't seem to get out with that short swing. And then, I tell the story. Then they got done wearing you out. Then you went into Los Angeles with Dusty Baker, Ron Say, Steve Garvey, Reggie Smith, Rick Monday, Davey Lopes, all those guys. So, there was a lot of great hitters in the league, and they were all trouble.
Somebody told me one day that you were like a twin of Steve Carlton. When they could see you pitch, it reminded them of Steve Carlton.
Except for the stats.
There you go. Now, we're finishing up here. Your book, God in the Bullpen. Where can people go to buy this book? I know you can probably download it and different things, because, I'm telling you, people, if you get a chance, you really need to read this book. It's a great book. Can you tell people where to find it at?
Sure. It's on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble. I would love to have, if you like the book, you don't like the book, if you read it, leave me a review, please. It would help my sales, and you can get it there. I call it my book of hope. because I feel like after I was diagnosed with cirrhosis, by God's great grace, He gave me another chance to tell my story, to be able to help others. And so, I wrote that book, and it's not just a book of just about drinking and all that stuff. It tells my whole story even tells the great inside story of the 23-22 game when after that I started and went into extra innings, and after I got knocked out in the first inning and hitting a home run in the first inning, Steve Carlton and I were drinking in the airport watching the game. It tells us next to Jimmy Dean. And, it tells a lot of fun baseball stories in there, some fun Tug McGraw stories, and then some real heart-wrenching stories. I think it's a good read. It's been getting some real good reviews, and I appreciate that, David.
No problem. And it probably even has something in there about the 35-run game at Wrigley Field.
Yeah, that's the one I was just talking about. Okay. The one I hit the home run in. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that game went on for a while, but we appreciate you being on the show tonight, Randy. If you ever come down, maybe you can fly down to Portsmouth, Ohio here and hang out with Al Oliver. We have a diamond dinner here every November, middle of November. Hopefully we can do it this year, but it's a fundraiser for the foundation, and we have Al Oliver there, Don Gullett, Doug Flynn, Tom Brown, wow. Ron Oster, and we have a pretty good little crowd there. Last year we had Stevie Delabar, and you just never know who's going to show up down here. So if you ever get a chance, maybe if you're down visiting somewhere around that time of year, you can come to the Diamond Dinner with us. Well,
shoot, that'd be great. I just want to, if hopefully everybody out there listens to the doctors and wears their masks and do the things that they need to do. And, by wearing their masks, they're thinking about other people too. And we can get rid of this darn pandemic, get a vaccine going, and then we can all get out and have some fun. Yeah, I can't wait till that day. You got that right. But Randy, thanks for being on the show, and I really do appreciate it, and I really appreciate your time. You're welcome. You're so welcome, David. God bless you and your foundation. Yeah. Thank you, Randy, and God bless you, and keep up the good work. Thanks, buddy. Talk to you soon.